Welcome to X-Men Evolution, episode 13 of Cyclops is Waiting for Me, an X-Men animated recap podcast. I'm Rod, and this is the last episode we're recording for the night. I'm not physically tired.
And the season.
Yes, the season finale. And I know how this ends, even before watching it, because TikTok comments. We left off, with the cliffhanger, so now we're going to continue in this one.
And I'm JC, and I'm actually using the script from episode 12, which is fine because none of what I have to read changes, and I didn't notice until we started recording. Cyclops is Waiting for Me is our weekly podcast series where we're going back and watching every single X-Men animated episode we can find, along with some bonus episodes. Our first series started with the original 1992 X-Men, the animated series, building up to the release of X-Men 97, which we thought was going to be coming to Disney Plus in 2023. As of Labor Day weekend, we don't know. But since it's not here yet, we need to find some other shows to cover, like X-Men Evolution.
Some quick reminders. We're a recap show about a series that started over 20 years ago. There will be spoilers. If you don't want it spoiled for you, pause the podcast, watch the episode, and come back, and also maybe not check out the comments on TikTok. We're currently not sponsored or affiliated with Marvel Animation, Disney, or Disney Plus in any way.
Or TikTok. Don't forget to follow us on Cyclops IWFM Pod on Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Twitter, which JC refuses to call X without mocking it, and Facebook. And of course, make sure to follow us on your favorite podcast service.
I mean, technically, Twitter still calls itself Twitter because you still have to go to twitter.com.
You can go to twitter.com, but you can also go to X.
They have x.com?
I believe that was kind of the whole point.
Oh. Should I look that up and risk...
I love that this is like a month after the rebrand in real time.
Okay, so you can go to x.com. It just goes to twitter.com, though.
Yeah, it's a redirect.
So Twitter is still the main... Okay, whatever. Anyway, it's...
You mean he didn't plan this? He didn't migrate everything over properly?
Now into the show. Today we're going to be talking about Season 1, Episode 13. Once again, season finale, titled The Cauldron, Part 2. It still doesn't make any more sense after this episode.
I actually wrote The Crucible and then scratched it out and wrote The Cauldron. Yeah.
That's hilarious. It aired May 12th, 2001. Currently sits at a 7.6 star rating on IMDb. Wow, they actually made people wait a week for this back then.
Of course they did. It was only a 13-episode season.
This episode is, to my recollection, the first time there's a previously on.
Yes, but they specifically say last time on. They didn't say previously on.
Yeah, it was the last. And fair enough, this is, I think, the first time there's a multi-part episode.
Accurate.
So they covered everything from the previous episode, and then that was the cold open. Then it goes into the intro. When it comes back from the intro, Toad is sulking, is nasty, and eats a fly.
Sad Toad.
Yeah, sad Toad. And if you remember, like, he had just lost, or I guess lost, I don't know. Lost his... Like,
he lost twice.
Twice, yeah. Well, he did lose twice. Maybe that was the thing. It wasn't that he necessarily lost to Rogue, it's that he definitely lost the first time. And
then he lost again.
And Nightcrawler comes up and grabs his tongue, which is nasty, man. Mm-hmm. And asks where everybody went. Like what happened? Like, this is the freaking rapture, because everybody just kind of disappeared.
Yeah, and Toad is like, yep, I got left behind. We're all a bunch of losers. And then he proceeds to tell people about Magneto.
And this is what I was saying last episode about Magneto not thinking things through. He took people who were loyal to him and, like, screwed them and left them out there in the wild.
But I feel like if you get all the winners, these people don't feel like as much of a threat. Maybe the argument can be made is if, like, the Storm Mystique fight, either person is a threat, or the Sabretooth Wolverine fight, either person is a threat. But, like, I mean, what is Evan gonna do, really?
Right. But with the people on his side, though, they have information. So that's what Toad says. He's like, well, hell to that. I'm not loyal to anything anymore. And so he spills the beans about what Magneto's doing. This is the first time anyone that's not part of the Brotherhood has any clue what's going on.
Jump over to Asteroid M, and Cyclops is talking to Professor X, and he's like, look, we're here to listen. And it's like, well, maybe you should, like, see what happens to the people who don't listen. And that's where it's the reveal that they're, like, all locked up, and Scott is not happy about that.
So he speaks up. Apparently he didn't see that there were entire whole ass humans in tubes. Xavier tries to telepathically talk to Scott, and
Scott reacts. That's the problem. Is Scott made like a motion to look to Xavier, and that's where Magneto's like, nope, fuck yourself. Yeah. You're messing this up.
But also, I guess it's like, is Xavier required to touch his head when he does that? Because I think that was like the real tell. There's a confirmation because Magneto looks back and Xavier's like concentrating. Like, I understand the concentrating part, but he's like touching his head like the iconic Xavier.
I'm pretty sure he does not have to touch his head.
So he needs to work on his poker face is the wrong word. Poker thing.
Tell.
I don't know. Tell. Yeah, there.
His tell.
His tell. So yeah, so Magneto's like, nope, and he puts Xavier in a tube. Right before he goes unconscious, Xavier like shoots like a last second message off to Wolverine. He's like, lose the battle. And Wolverine's like, what? And Alex, who's still, and we're getting the idea that he's still pretty young and kind of naive. Also, he hasn't been through any of this superhero shit yet.
Yeah, he has no idea of what's going on. And, you know, when we saw them in the flashback, I would say you looked like they were probably like 2 years difference when they were younger, based on the size difference between them. So, you know, he's probably closer to like Evan's age than he is to Scott's age, you know?
Yeah. And Alex says, well, Magneto just wants to help. And, the reason Alex says this is because Scott is ready to blast Xavier out of that tube. Magneto says, like, if you do that, he won't survive the
decompression
or whatever.
Yep.
And that's when Alex is like, he stops because Cyclops is like, his charge is all, like, his eyes are all charged up. You can see it through the glasses. And Alex, like, stops him. He's like, Magneto just wants to help everyone. And at the very least, he puts a pause on Cyclops, just like blowing up the room.
Or at least killing Xavier.
Yeah, right. And then back on the island, Wolverine is
You
like,
could call it Hawaii.
Yeah, oh yeah. Wolverine is like trying to like rationalize like why Xavier would have told him to stand down and then like not elaborate. And I think it was, if I remember right, it was something that like Sabretooth saying about getting a reward or whatever again. And he was like, oh, you're right. Like, I don't want this. And so he lets himself get like knocked off the cliff,
which looks incredibly painful. Like, it was reminiscent of how Black Widow lands in Endgame.
Yeah.
Like, he's just on a rock cliff face, like just like looking like he was dead.
And it looked like he might have been acting a bit, because once the orb comes and gets Sabretooth, he like, opens the one eye to make sure he's gone.
And then he looks over and there's just the helicopter chilling right by him.
Yeah, I saw that. It was like, and he steals a helicopter, I guess.
Yes.
At the mansion, Spike, Kitty, Nightcrawler, and Toad arrive and find Mystique there. And
Toad calls Mystique a loser too.
Right, which is true. That's how I've been noting that group. Everybody got like not raptured as the losers in my notes. So
Toad and Rod have both called Mystique a loser.
Yep.
And Mystique, one, gets pissed at Toad, and then two, she's like, No, we're gonna pay him a visit. You want to go together? And that's when Wolverine returns. Which, by the way, geographically, Wolverine flew somehow from Hawaii to New York.
In a helicopter.
A helicopter cannot do that.
The magic of family.
Dude, there was, I would get it if there's a fancy special high-tech helicopter like what we're going to see in a few minutes. That was a regular like just helicopter. Yeah. So it took the kids to come from the beach back to the mansion as long as it took Wolverine to get from Hawaii back to New York.
Maybe the kids also went to like, California to the beach. I don't know. I don't know how long Mystique has been
on a road trip?
Yeah,
It's a 40-hour drive.
Right. I know, I made it.
That's same. I won't do it again.
Yeah, I did it several times. I won't do it again. It's nope. I'm old. My note here exactly says, Logan arrives and all the losers decide to go after Magneto. Yeah, and Mystique's like, well, I know him best, so I'm going to call the shots. And Logan's like, okay, good luck with that. And so starts leaving. And then he's
like, get your own ride.
Yeah. And she's like, fine. She's like, but I get like a say or an input in it or whatever.
You have to consult me, essentially. Yeah.
It's really, really pathetic, like, last words.
And that's where we get the toy reveal, which I don't know if this actually got turned into a toy, but it was called the XM Velocity, which was the most Extreme Games name for a helicopter I've ever heard in my fucking life.
I wrote that down too. I was like, was that just to throw a bunch of 90s buzzwords into a hat and then pick them out?
John, remember when this episode airs, look up to see if they made a toy with this.
Yeah, it sounds like they would.
It sounds like a toy name, hardcore.
And it actually gets referred to kind of as a toy later. Yeah, that's the only reason they have new vehicles in these shows, right? It's like you can introduce like another accessory.
I don't actually remember toys for Evolution. I mean, we weren't at the age group, like we talked about. There was that awkward, like, senior year of high school going into college. Like, we kind of like separated from the collector market at that point for both of us, weirdly enough.
And then by this point, this was May 2001. Yeah, I was packing my bags for college. So
same.
I just wasn't like in that headspace. And the next like 6 years of my life was just a blur. And then on the asteroid, Scott is like on a balcony. I guess you can breathe in that atmosphere. I don't know how far up they are.
I got the impression they're not that high up. I got the impression that the asteroid is like floating like halfway up a mountain height, and they're just in flat area.
So it's more of like a Howling's floating castle thing or something instead of an asteroid.
I think it's built on an asteroid.
Yeah. But it's like, how does it, I have questions about the floating and gravity and whatever. It doesn't matter. But he's out there and he's having a flashback of the plane crash, and it plays out how I imagine, like how I'm known it. You know, it's kind of like seeing Bruce Wayne's parents and stuff. You kind of have like this template, and a couple things could get changed around. But besides the Corsair thing that you mentioned before, it's kind of what I expected. It's like this couple, and they send their kids out because there's only enough parachutes for the two of them. That was the change you mentioned, though, instead of sharing one.
So that's the only part that I actually had a problem with the change. Was they're both small kids. Mm-hmm. Why would you not each parent grab a kid and wear the parachute? Because they're not heavy enough that like you can't tandem jump with them.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't clarify they were good parents.
I mean, they're not the worst parents because they didn't jump out and leave the kids.
Well,
so
I guess maybe better word, capable parents.
Fair.
Because they both took their children on some sort of dangerous mission. They didn't clarify in this version what that was. I know there's been takes on it before. But also, they're like, oh, crisis, let's let these children who, even if they land in the jungle, are they going to be like raised by wolves or something? Like, what's going to happen? Jungle's wrong with wolves, but you know.
I was going to say, Rod, there's so many problems with what you just said. Alex arrives and they kind of start talking a little bit more about it. And you see that Scott's parachute caught fire, which is why the two of them got separated.
I thought it was kind of sweet because they had the flashback together.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when you and a friend have the same dream, you're like, wait, are we visiting this different planet or something together?
Nope, never had that. Nope. Now you're making shit up.
Right. So then it reveals that Scott was in a coma for a while.
Yeah, he hit the ground pretty hard, and it put him in a coma for a month. And the hospital told him he was the only one that made it, and he apologizes to Alex for it because he's like, if I had known, I would have looked for you.
He was a kid when it happened, so why wouldn't you believe the adult in the hospital when he woke up? But then he's like old enough now, he's starting to...
Also, why would anybody lie about that to you as a kid?
Right. Or, I mean, like, at least, like, investigate into it. Like, is he really... Like, did you find...
Yeah, like, where's the... Yeah. Like, did you guys put out a search party?
But he's now old enough. I feel like this is around the age you start questioning your authorities if you weren't already. You're like, are things really the way they are and stuff?
You mean like when your mentor doesn't tell you about the arch villain that...
Right. Created an asteroid.
Yeah.
And so he apologizes, rightfully so. And Alex continues to describe the feeling of his powers manifesting that he thought in the previous episode was really interesting. He says his joints are on fire. And as someone I've had joint problems since I was like a kid, I was like, what an interesting take on that. That probably wasn't on purpose, but like maybe it was, because when you're going through that, puberty and stuff hurts and growing pains and stuff. That's reason they call it growing pains and things. What an interesting take on that. The doctors wrote it off as like, oh, you're just growing up or whatever, and he's like, no, I can literally like shoot like lasers out of my hands,
I killed a shark, sir.
Right. And then Magneto intrudes because Magneto also has no boundaries. It sounds like he was listening to at least the end of that conversation, because he kind of continues their conversation with saying like, well, you were both part of the mutant evolution. And then that's that meme of like Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the screen like, oh, they said the thing. Like this is a show.
Well, he mentions it's essentially going to be like a renaissance too, which is, obviously a lot of beautiful things have come out of the Renaissance, but Renaissance also is a little bit of turmoil too, because a lot of change needs to happen.
Yeah, and questionable practices. A lot of mistakes are made in times like that. So he walks them inside to show them like what's really going on there, because it's not just you get to come to like Utopia. And this is the part that was spoiled for me on TikTok. The
mutant enhancer.
Yeah, but you have described something kind of like this with the comics, right? Where they're kind of enhancing or combining powers and stuff.
Well, there's a few things. In the comics, you have secondary evolutions. So like a psychic, and then her secondary evolution was being able to turn into a diamond form. Beast went more feral and went from looking a little bit like ape-like to being more feline with his appearance. It started in the Grant Morrison run, he started to look like a fucking lion, essentially. So that was one thing. The other was, people using the X gene as a drug. So people could get powers or enhance powers via this drug. And then the other one is like, if you have two mutants together, essentially, like they would do a synergy style of powers, like the powers 1 + 1 = 3 scenario.
And so he's explaining how these things are working, and then this is I think probably the reason why we got the Juggernaut episode, because remember when the Juggernaut episode happened, we were like, why was that episode a thing?
And also in the Juggernaut episode, they mentioned that he used mysticism, but they never specified that he was holding the gem of Sidorak. And also he was a mutant too, which is not standard. But the only part that drove me nuts, where I actually yelled at the screen, Magneto called it Sidorak, and I yelled. Especially because it was a Juggernaut episode where you specifically mentioned, like, and thanks to 92, I know how to pronounce Sidorak. Yep. And it's like, what the fuck? That was probably a rushed voice acting session, right? Like there wasn't someone... Or just not a reference, because, you know, they weren't looking at a VHS at that point. All that said, I would be lying if I didn't admit, I always thought his name was Thanos, not Thanos. So, can't give him too much shit for a thing that has only been pronounced in 2 episodes of a cartoon previously. Like, they're not looking up Comic-Con Hall H footage for that kind of thing. And he never mentions it again. But he does pull up the gem. And I guess also, if you didn't really know the other show or the comics, you wouldn't have connected Juggernaut's mysticism, like you mentioned, with this. But that's, once again, I'm assuming everybody already knows this lore, but for some reason you're just jumping into this episode. That crystal is what in other versions have given Juggernaut his power, and in this version enhanced his powers. But so I kind of dig, besides the pronunciation, I kind of dig this little retcon where he's like, okay, well, if it did this for Juggernaut, then we're going to do this with everybody, or the chosen ones, or whatever. So he has this machine. It's basically like a tunnel you walk through. It's like a self-guided conveyor belt, and it enhances people and stuff. And I think it was Scott that was like, why don't you do it yourself? He's like, already did. Where do you think his white hair came from? And then he sends Sabretooth through. Yeah, because Cyclops still doesn't trust him. He's like, all right, it's fine. I'll just put the one with a stupid healing factor through it anyway, just to be safe. And then Sabretooth comes out just like a buffer version of himself, because he was already kind of feral to begin with, so now he's just like bigger. But also remember, like, when we talked about this redesign of Sabretooth, I think I mentioned it in the first appearance, like, he was almost too trim. Yeah. Now he actually fits the build of historical Sabretooth. Yeah, everybody is more bulky in a muscular way when they come out of this machine. It's like one of the enhancements, like jaw lines and everything. We catch up with the X-Men who are approaching in the, what was it, XM Velocity. Logan reveals to Toad that the ship's not made of any metal, and so Toad is like, what the fuck? I'm just in a cheap plastic thing or whatever, you know? So this is something that not only... It kind of compounds with what you were saying before with Xavier. It's like, not only did you not tell the kids that Magneto is this big threat, but you were preparing for him. I will say, Wolverine is super, super excited to fly. Did you notice, like, he was, like, legitimately enjoying it? Yeah, he's probably been watching it being, like, constructed for however, like, months or whatever it's taken to make this thing. Which, who's building it? There's no Beast. There's so many things. There's, like, who's making all the repairs? Who built the hangar? Yeah. Who built the fucking Cerebro? Anyway, with all this labor that we're assuming is getting killed after they constructed it, because they're not talking about it afterwards. And then everybody else super freaked out. Yeah, so they're like, we're on a plastic ship. And then that's when we get Sabretooth emerging from the enhancement machine or whatever as an actual Bigfoot is what I know it was. Did you notice, though, his legs had changed form and it was a little bit more like a lion's paw? As opposed to like a regular like human foot. Like it had like that arch to it as I'm doing this on an audio podcast. Yeah, right. Yeah. I didn't notice that. He became furrier, so that it was a little more werewolfy in terms of like body structure and such. So but other than that, his demeanor didn't change that much. I know they said like, you know, they mentioned later, like, oh, it changes the way you think. It's like, not Sabretooth. There's no lights on inside anyway, so... I think he had 2 lights on, and now he only has 1. You're right. So... And then the brothers debate going in. Yeah, and Alex is like, I want to do it, but I'm not going to do it without you, which I kind of appreciated, because, like, at first, I didn't know if Alex was kind of brainwashed a little bit into Magneto stuff, but he's obviously just naive, as opposed to, like, I'm all in. Yeah. He's just a kid. Right. And once again, like, this is his first introduction into this whole, like, craziness of the mutant world and stuff. So the brothers do go in, but as the vault door closes, Jean yells at them because they're all awake now because, like, Magneto wants them to watch the brothers get changed and stuff. And then Xavier telepathically warns them that last second as the vault door closes
that this machine will like alter their minds. But it's too late. Scott's inside. And then the enhancement process was a lot faster than I thought it was going to be. I thought there was going to be like a struggle. It might even be painful or whatever. They just kind of open up. They walk out.
They're there and they're on like a little conveyor belt. And it does happen pretty quick, but you could see there's like some moment of resistance at the beginning where they're like, oh shit, I want to get off of this thing. And then they can't.
Oh, hi, Lucy. Lucy's making a cameo now.
That's fine.
Hey girl. If you hear a little purring, that's what's happening now too. I guess she's just comfortable right here. Okay.
So Scott and Alex emerge and I put bigger with white hair.
Yeah, super buff and white hair. And I guess this show's explanation of Magneto's hair, I guess.
Maybe? I don't know. It also makes me wonder if Quicksilver has already been enhanced and that's why he's a teenager with white hair.
You know what? I forgot too. You mentioned it wasn't explicitly said in the show, but the showrunners or whatever, it said that Magneto had figured a way to like initiate the X gene. That's why Nightcrawler is the way he is.
He had experimented on him, yeah.
So there might be some merit to Quicksilver, like you said, like maybe he doesn't know of something that was done to him when he was a baby or something.
Probably.
Huh. Interesting.
And Magda's probably still dead in this universe too, right. So.
And then Magneto calls Alex Havoc. Doesn't give a reason, but he's just like, my Havoc. I guess it just sounds like a cool 90s word.
So, interestingly enough, this is the only time in the series where he is ever called Havoc is this episode.
I guess that makes sense because we'll see later, like it's like his villain code name.
Right.
And then he looks over at Scott, and I was waiting for him to rename Scott too. Mm-hmm. He was like, show him your eyes. And then we see that he's able to take his glasses off and like control the optic blast, which is kind of a cool thing to be able to hang on to, though. I mean, despite the, mental the mind change or whatever and the muscular stuff.
I mean, that's two positives and one negative if you really want to think about it.
Right, yeah.
Dude is jacked. He can now control his eyes, but he's brainwashed.
Yeah. Right after this, they kind of clarify on that. He's not even really brainwashed. He says, you're just devoid of useless emotions.
Which I would love.
Right. He said it gives you clear perspective.
If I don't have emotions, I don't worry about people.
Right, there you go. I guess that's the thing. You have no perspective. Because my argument was like...
This is my villain origin story.
There you go, yeah. I was thinking, like, if you have no emotions, then, like, there's not really a perspective. You just, that's objectivity. So that's fine. That's its own thing. Or maybe not fine, but that's its own thing.
Nope. That's what the AI uprising is going to say, Rod.
Right.
And in 6 months from now, you're not going to be speaking that tune.
Right. No, I, for one, welcome our robot overlords. And
there's a reason I tell my Amazon device thank you after it's done, giving a task for me. So
he's like, here's a candy bar. And so the ship arrives.
Yeah, the alarm goes off, and then Magneto has a skylight ready to go.
Yeah, and he waves his hand like it's going to do something, and he's like, there's no metal in that ship.
And then I respond with, cocky Xavier.
Did he say something? I forgot if he...
He just gives him like a look. Like the smug asshole, like, meh. Like I just shrugged my shoulders emoji.
That's funny. And then Scott and Havoc shoot down the ship on Magneto's command.
Yeah, they run out to the landing pad and they just shoot it down.
And then
which is an awful crash landing, too.
Yeah, it looked like it would have killed everyone.
Especially if it's made of plastic.
Made of plastic and filled with kids, except for Mystique and Logan. And then my note here says, the losers emerge from the ship and then start fighting.
But before they do that, Jean has started to get her power back because Magneto had let everybody regain consciousness. And as Scott and Havoc are about to get run over by the ship, she actually pulls them into safety relatively, and then the wall collapses as the ship fully stops.
This is probably a part I missed while I was like looking down to write my notes, because once again, if you didn't remember from the previous episode, because of technical difficulties, I couldn't pause or do anything with this episode. I just had to like go like in real time.
So were you like, how did they end up under rubble?
Yeah, I didn't even know until later. They're like, Scott and Havoc are still under the rubble. I was like, they were under rubble? Okay.
Yeah, so to your point, the losers emerge. Mystique just goes right to Magneto with his full defense of other Brotherhood kids right there.
But she was angry. She was like, why did I have to prove myself?
Wolverine jumps on top of the tubes and cuts those off. And then immediately Sabretooth attacks him. Makes sense. And then everybody starts doing like the getaway plan. And Storm and Rogue are there to get the Blackbird up and running again.
And then Xavier and Jean go after Scott and Alex. See how good my notes were, because I was trying to do this in real time. Nightcrawler knocks the Blob out. Kitty and Spike knock out Lance.
When he knocks Blob out, Blob accidentally opens the door to the tube.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, okay, I didn't catch that. Now, but yeah, okay, yeah, because the tube needs to be open.
I love that Rod is experiencing this episode twice tonight for the first time.
Then Kitty and Spike knock out Lance, or Avalanche, I guess he's finally being called in this episode. Mystique
and Magneto continue to fight.
She gets knocked into the enhancer. This is specifically what was spoiled for me in the TikTok comments, because we had made a TikTok about why does Mystique turn into animals and stuff. And the commenter, who once again I'm going to assume was kind of innocent, was like, well, was this before or after she got thrown to the enhancer at the end? I was like, oh, okay. So
and you're like, oh. And then Magneto goes in after her.
Oh, yeah. But I guess it doesn't affect him twice, because I don't know.
I mean, we'd have no idea.
But he was like, no. I couldn't tell. I guess it could have been for a number of reasons, but it was either that, like, he didn't want to have someone that pissed at him, that powerful. He already had made a decision of who would be, like, the fittest to go through the process. So it was like a double, like, disappointment for him. Mm-hmm. Sabretooth and Wolverine fight with a little help from Toad. Like I said, I've been looking down to write my notes a little bit, so I'm not sure if Toad had been helping other people in the fights as well, but it looked like he was just kind of skulking around the ceiling, kind of like dropping little bits of help.
Toad helped a little bit with the Mystique and Magneto thing. Magneto was throwing metal at her, and he interfered on that one.
So he was kind of like just like sprinkled throughout all these.
Right. Yeah, the part that you didn't mention was Mystique basically took a computer to the face, and that's what knocked her into the enhancement tube.
She's resilient. She's like that Chumbawamba song.
Oh, dude. I mean, I guess if you're a shapeshifter, like, it's really fucking hard to kill you, apparently.
Right. Spike fights Quicksilver, which is basically the same fight they had when they first met. 2.0.
And he finally figures out how to stop him.
Yeah, with the
which just throws spikes in the ground. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Rogue knocks him out by absorbing a little bit of his power. I like she's kind of like the wild card, right? That's she can do like whenever they like if they can corner you, Rogue can take you out. That's right. That's like the trick.
Jean and Xavier get to Scott, try to get them out of there. Toad grabs Lance and Blob, and they're like, wait, man, what are you doing? What side are we on? And Toad's response is, I'm on the side that lives. Like,
right, yeah.
Which I respect. That is exactly what Toad should be doing. And then Blob sees, like, during the fight, rubble got in the way of their escape. And Blob just, like, blasts through it. He just throws himself through it. Storm tornadoes Sabretooth, and that's how he gets out. Scott is kind of, like, blasting out of their thing. And then gets mad at Xavier and Jean, yeah.
For no emotions, there's having emotions.
Yeah, his emotion seems to be anger.
Right. And my note here is Jean breaks up with Scott. Well, I guess they're not together yet, but she's just like, I'm done.
Well,
whatever.
Scott has gone full on, like, with the brainwashing of, like, we're the future. And Jean's like, yeah, if that's the future, I don't want to be any part of it. And Xavier, said mutants shouldn't be separated. But we weren't the ones who drew the line. Magneto was, and you were the one who crossed it. And just throws that right in Scott's face.
It was basically Xavier's version of the I'm not mad, I'm disappointed speech.
Wolverine and Xavier start going to the jet, and it's like, they'll do what they need to. It's basically like, I'm going to leave him behind and let him make his own fucking decision.
Yeah, it's kind of cold for someone who'd had that much history, but I guess they saw that there was no hope. I don't know. I wasn't in those shoes, so I don't know. Then Mystique emerges from the enhancer machine as Rebecca Romaine Stamos.
Yeah, she 100% just literally took the scale mode from the X-Men movie.
And the short hair and everything, the shorter hair and stuff.
Yep.
So, there had to be an influence where, like, okay, movies are doing hot, or I don't know if they're doing well, or they just wanted to promote them, or both.
I mean, that movie was considered a success on release, so no doubt that was an inspiration for it.
We need some synergy here,
Yep.
And the brothers kind of come to.
Right. As the jet starts to take off, Xavier basically was like, we couldn't force them to come with us. They were too powerful. And that's where Scott and Alex have made the decision to join them. And if that happened, the landing pad just starts to crash.
Yeah. And so the ship falls off the asteroid basically and stuff, and then the brothers can't make the jump anymore, but they do jump, and this is like supposed to be like a really sentimental moment that parallels their origin story. They fall off and they hold hands this time to stay together
while using powers that would murder most people.
Right. Yeah. I thought that this was gonna be the cliffhanger, and then we would see what happens in the second season, but then the powers they use their powers to like soften their landing.
Yeah, they basically use the concussive blast to slow their fall. And then they realize the asteroid has started to fall, and they unleash all of their power back up into it to prevent everybody else from being crushed and killed by this.
Which, how much fucking power did they have? Holy crap.
Dude, the visual effect that they added for it exploding literally reminded me of the Death Star explosions from Star Wars. It was like everything is exploding at every single angle, and the debris would have murdered them. But aside from that,
it's kind of like when Sokovia back down. Like
that's actually
anyway, right?
Yeah, it definitely. Well, and we know from other shows, Sokovia definitely killed lots of people on the landing. So
as it's exploding, they just kind of nonchalantly show 2 orbs flying out of it.
Yes, specifically 2 orbs, even though we know there are 3 people in there.
No explanation. That's our cliffhanger.
Yeah, because Magneto, Mystique, and Quicksilver were still in there.
Yeah, I forgot about Quicksilver.
Yeah, everybody does.
Yeah, right. And then when the crazy, like the whitewash of the blast fades, Scott and Alex are back to normal. I didn't know that's how that power worked. Did they drain themselves of their buffness?
Whatever was in them, they let it all out. Yeah, I mean,
I have to accept that.
You couldn't let them stay in that mode. I mean, one, just the physical difference of them looking like big weirdo dudes in high school, like it wouldn't have worked. So yeah.
Well, because at first I thought maybe it had something to do with destroying the Cyttorak, or however they said it, crystals instead of Cyttorak. Crystals, like, does that...
I don't think you could destroy the gem, to be honest.
But that can't be true, because I know from the spoilers that Mystique stays that way. So...
yeah, I think it was they expelled the energy.
Wild. But anyway, yeah, so no one questions that part. They're like, cool, you're back to normal.
Jean walks up and gives Scott his glasses.
And they have, like, their Full House ending.
Scott apologizes, and he's like, I made some bad choices. Xavier says you made some misinformed choices, which I think is the worst apology I've ever heard, because he's the reason he was misinformed.
Yeah, he was like,
The whole season was about lack of information.
I was gonna say, it's not even misinformed, it's like uninformed, right?
Yeah.
Like, you just didn't know about this dude, and to Scott's credit, A, he's a teenager, and B, he just found out his brother was still alive after thinking he was dead for several years. And so, like, there were some bad choices in the middle of that, but, like, they don't feel like they were specifically ill-intentioned. Like, he followed his brother into a machine because he didn't want him to go alone.
And he tried to stop at the end. It wasn't like he was already, like, sold in, like, F you, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
I kind of didn't like... There's something about this version of Xavier, and I don't want to say I don't like the character. I just don't like him.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Watch him become the big bad at the end of the series.
I mean, dude, I've told you, in the comics, there have been times where Xavier goes wrong. Like, some of the shit that he does is very shady in the comics. So
I think it was you and Michelle Waffle, when she was on, had talked about, like, the weird, like, creepy Xavier or something.
Well, I mean, there's times where Xavier's psyche merged with Magneto's psyche, and that created Onslaught. There's the founding of Krakoa is all based on a lie that, basically there is a reset point that happens, and they don't tell people about that, and they literally hide a certain character. Like, there's, like, lots of shady shit that happens.
If there's people who are, I don't know, well educated in, like, writing and storytelling and stuff, you probably know a word for this. I don't know what it is, but it feels like this is a trope. Or if there isn't a word, one of you guys should come up with it, and you will go down in history, because this is something. So Xavier's this in the X-Men universe, not just a show, just in X-Men in general. And then, like, in, like, Mortal Kombat, Raiden's always this guy. I must consult the elder gods, and Raiden always fucks shit up. But he's supposed to be the one that saves it. And then, like, in the MCU, it's like Iron Man or the Avengers in general always cause, like, the problems that they have to take care of later and stuff. It's like the hero, had they not been involved, like, a lot of the problems.
It's kind of the Batman theory of Gotham is as bad as it is because it's an arms race war of escalation because of him existing.
Yeah. So whatever that's called.
Yeah, I don't know what the phrasing for that is, but I've definitely heard that it's like, just by being there, other stuff is like a butterfly effect that keeps getting worse. So
yeah, we'll see how Xavier progresses through this show.
Yeah, so Toad is like, yep, wonder what's going to happen to us. And then Lance notices that the 2 of the balls had popped out, and he's like, well, Mystique's going to be back.
Yeah.
You get, the reuniting moment from Alex and Cyclops, and then it's just kind of like you're always welcome to come to the Institute. And it's the everybody is in the unnatural pose climax to the episode.
So you can take a screenshot for your desktop wallpaper.
Except if you're on Disney Plus and screen grab doesn't work on the desktop app for it. Yeah. So
no, this is back in the DVD days.
Yeah, back when they were like, oh, people can rip stuff?
Right. Yeah, but that's season 1 of Evolution. And we had our criticisms of some stuff, but I surprisingly really liked it. I didn't know how I was going to feel about it because, I love the 92 series so much. I think they did a smooth transition of adapting these characters as kids for the most part, keeping it kind of fun and relatable, a little bit updated, but still that kind of Y2K feeling, and I guess a genuine amount of suspense.
Right.
Is the right word? Because you definitely know more about the X-Men universe than I do. We're both kind of like, what's going to happen next?
Yeah, I've mentioned on previous episodes, what I have read has always been the core characters as adults. Aside from reading X-Men #1 way back in the 60s and what we're reading it as a reprint, which you still get to do, I didn't start reading X-Men until the 90s. And at that point, they were already adults.
Yeah.
So yes, I read, First Class, which was a flashback story. I read X-Men Gold, I believe was the book, or X-Men Blue, I can't remember, where it was the kids from the past get brought into the future and stuff like that. But it's I've not really read the straight up stories of them as a group still in school. So,
you just brought back a memory. I did read a portion of the First Class series because several lifetimes ago, I worked at Barnes & Noble and in the music section, and it was right next to the graphic novels.
Yep.
So when it was dead, I would go grab something, and I don't know why, maybe it was on display or something. I grabbed some of the First Class books and start reading them, and I really liked them. I think I remember a story of them taking a tour somewhere in the Alps or whatever, and then their tour guide ended up becoming Thor. Or will end up revealing himself as Thor, if that sounds right. Anyway, I really loved all those stories. And then when the First Class movies came out, I was 1,000% extra pissed because it was not at all based on any of the stories of the First Class books.
Right. You are not wrong about that. It was definitely a very different take on it. I enjoy First Class, and I could see if that's your only version of First Class is just reading the First Class book. It's kind of like my feelings about Secret Invasion. I'm I have a very specific narrative in my head of what Secret Invasion is, and this is just a total discrepancy for me.
But also, no matter what side you're on, we can all agree that we're disappointed in the show.
Yeah. I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I was a little unsure because we know that 92 aged really well, like Batman the Animated Series did, and not all cartoons from that era do age well. So I was a little nervous, was this going to be one that did? And thankfully it has. I'm sure the Leewalds get a little bit of credit for reinventing how Marvel was using their cartoon series, because not all of them kept our interest. Not all of them made us keep coming back to it. There's a reason why everybody cares about the X-Men stories, but nobody's asking for another Fantastic Four cartoon.
Right, like Silver Surfer or something.
Yeah, I've never watched that. I probably won't watch that.
So I did watch it. I really enjoyed it, but the reason I would say not to watch it is it doesn't end. They never finished the story. It just got canceled or something. But up until then, I liked it.
But we've also heard that we've heard that about this show is it ends on a pseudo cliffhanger, which I don't love.
Oh, that's right. Kit
let us know. Which is not a spoiler, but it's also not great to hear. So, cool. Rod, we get to take a few weeks off to, before we have to go into season 2.
Yeah, I'm turning 41 in that time off.
Yeah, you are.
So, pray for my liver. I'm going to try to make it longer than last year. Last year, our mutual friend Billy, I was doing good all night, and then and this is probably a culmination, not just him, but he bought me a banana flavored Harry Potter cocktail or whatever. And it was one of those things where I remember the shot coming up, but I don't remember the glass coming down. And
that sounds awful.
And then I don't remember. And then waking up the next afternoon in this room on a pile of my things. Speaking of, it looks like my cat has snuck in the room. Hang on, I'll be right back.
We couldn't even end the episode.
Okay, we got to end this episode because my cat is lacking attention.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
Rod is literally doing the sign off with his cat hugging him right now.
Yeah, this is her spot. Ever since she was a kid, that you can't see because it's audio. Thanks for joining us. If you have any thoughts, make sure to drop them into the comments for either the YouTube upload or official Instagram post about this episode. If you like what you heard, we'd appreciate a rating on the podcast app you're choosing. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and CastBox. You good, Lucy?
Lucy's good. We can end the episode.